Ladies and gentlemen, the fantasy football season kicks off this Thursday night with the Lions and the Chiefs, so you guys are going to need to know the top 30 running back rankings. I got you covered for week one here. We're starting it off quick with Austin Ekeler going against the Miami Dolphins here. Chargers and the Dolphins both have high-powered offenses. So what am I expecting? A high-scoring game. I don't think the Dolphins' defense is horrible by any means, but I think Austin Ekeler can overcome this defense. He's an elite pass-catching running back, and they might ease their way into the season here. All right, this is the first game of the season. Some dump-down passes to Ekeler. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe he gets into the end zone once or twice. That's why he's ranked number one on this list today. Number two might be a little bit of a shocker. We got a rookie sighting in S tier, week number one. He has never played a game in the NFL. Bijan Robinson has a great matchup against the Carolina Panthers. Whoa, buddy. You're ranking Bijan at number two. The guy's never played a game. Listen, if there's any team to play in your first game ever, it's the Carolina Panthers. All right. Do you guys remember last season what Joe Mixon did to this defense? I know it's not the same exact defense. I understand. But the Panthers have not been able to stop the run in I don't know how many years. Joe Mixon put up 55.1 PPR fantasy points in week number 9 last season against the Carolina Panthers. Do I expect Bijan Robinson to put up 55 points? No. If he puts up a 30 piece, I'll be rejoicing. But I don't know. I 25 points. I'll take 25 points from Bijan Robinson. Now, obviously, we're going to see how Bijan is used in this matchup. All right. Does he get the 20 to 25 carries that everybody's expecting him to get? Or does he get like 15 carries and a lot of passing down work? Only time will tell. And, we'll only be able to look back after the week's over and tell you. But I'm feeling great about starting Bijan. Now, the Panthers offense with Bryce Young, I think it's going to struggle. I think they're going to be off the field very quickly, almost every single drive, struggling to move the ball on this Falcons defense. That's obviously not great, but it's Bryce Young's first game. I think there's going to be some jitters. I think there's going to be some nerves in this first game. So Falcons will have the ball more and dominate on the run game. Moving on to A tier. All right. At number 3, Christian McCaffrey going against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can probably tell already why I have McCaffrey down below Bijan this week and Ekeler. It's not the best matchup. All right. I'm not the biggest fan of this matchup because Pittsburgh has a tough defense. They've always had a tough defense, but you can never count out Christian McCaffrey. All right. He's the most explosive pass catching running back in the league, in my opinion, that we've seen so far. Now, like I said, I'm slightly downgrading him just because of the matchup. It has nothing to do with the player. The rest of the season, I'll probably have him ranked in S tier, but as of right now, we're going to keep him in A tier at number 3 for week number 1. Number 4, Josh Jacobs going against the Denver Broncos. Now, Denver is another team that doesn't have a bad defense whatsoever, but even the best of defenses are going to look bad if their offense plays poorly. They have no Jerry Jeudy in week number 1. We've seen in the past that Courtland Sutton is not fit for the wide receiver number 1 role in Denver. So I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball too much. I don't know what's going to happen with Javonte Williams. We'll talk about that later on in this video. But I expect him to be on and off the field very quickly, just like I expect the Panthers to be on and off the field very quickly throughout the entirety of this game. Now, Jacobs last season had no problem performing well against Denver. Last season, he ran for over 100 yards in both matchups that he played against them. This could potentially be an ugly game for both teams, but if there's one person to bet on in this matchup, maybe even scoring a couple touchdowns, I think it's Josh Jacobs. Now, number 5 on this list, I might be a little bit low on. All right, I have Tony Pollard ranked super high, top 5 for the entire season rankings, all right, as running backs go. But week number 1, I have to put him in B tier. Even though he has the entirety of the backfield to himself for the first time in his entire career, he hasn't performed the greatest against the New York Giants. All right. Last season, he put up 10.5 fantasy points in their first matchup, and then he got 18 carries in their week 12 matchup and put up just 8.1 PPR fantasy points. Now, Pollard is usually somewhat reliable in the passing game as well, but against the Giants in those 2 matchups last season, he combined for just 1 reception. So do the Giants have Pollard's number, or was it kind of just lucky last season? I don't know. Number 6, also in B tier, we have Nick Chubb going against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I'm a huge Nick Chubb believer as well heading into the rest of the season, but I'm not too excited about this matchup as well. Similar situation to Pollard. Now, usually divisional games are kept pretty close. We've, come to know that across watching many games over many years. But I still believe the Browns O-line is going to be able to overpower Cincy's D-line in the long run. So Nick Chubb should be able to find the end zone in this matchup. He hasn't played as well with Deshaun Watson that he had with Jacoby Brissett last season. So This season is going to prove a lot of haters wrong, in my opinion. Everything goes right, he can finish as the #1 overall running back. We'll just have to see how the season plays out for Nick Chubb. Number 7 on our list today, we have Derrick Henry going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, this is a game that I think the Saints should win, right? The Saints have a very easy schedule, by the way, but we'll talk about that another time. The Titans have had a pretty awful pass defense the last few seasons, which could continue into this year. Now, if they go down early, the Titans that is, I'm not the biggest fan of Derrick Henry in this matchup. He doesn't catch too many passes. He'll catch a screen pass here and there and run it 99 yards all the way down the field and score a touchdown on you, but he doesn't do that too often. But I can't move Derrick Henry too low on this list just for the plain fact that if they get within the 5-yard line, it's like almost an automatic touchdown for Henry. They're going to run the ball 4 times, get him into the end zone 99% of the time. So if that happens, you can almost guarantee a Derrick Henry touchdown. So that's why he is at number 7 here, even though the matchup isn't the greatest. Saints don't have a bad defense by any means. So don't be knocking the Saints defense. Number 8 here, Saquon Barkley against the Dallas Cowboys. We just talked about how Pollard was struggling against the Giants. I looked into some stats, and it's the exact opposite with Saquon Barkley against the Dallas Cowboys. He actually played very well last season against the Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys this season arguably have a top 5 defense in football. So even with what we just talked about the matchup and him playing well against the Cowboys in the past season, I'm not 100% sure I'm all in on Barkley this week. I do think he finishes top 5 most weeks, but just not in week number 1. Although his PPR floor is very high. All right, he catches so many passes. He's one of the best pass catching running backs in the entire league. So I can't move him any lower than number 8. Rounding off beats here, might be a little bit of a shocker here. He's getting a little bit older here, but Aaron Jones going up against a very young Bears defense that might struggle in this game. I'm expecting the Packers to put up a very good fight, if not win this game. Even if Jordan Love struggles in this matchup, he's going to be dumping the ball off to Aaron Jones, and we're going to really see how much Aaron Jones catches balls out of the backfield in this matchup. Now, week number 2 last season, Aaron Jones ended up putting up 32 PPR fantasy points against the Bears. So it appears that Aaron Rodgers isn't the only one who owns the Bears. Aaron Jones, he could be put into that conversation as well. I'd be very comfortable starting him in this week 1 matchup. And you also probably have him as your running back number 2. He's been going late in the 4th round, early 5th round in most drafts. So you're feeling very good about this week 1 matchup for Aaron Jones, especially if he's your running back number 2, like I just said. Now, breaking into C tier here, we have Joe Mixon going against the Cleveland Browns in week number 1. Now, the matchup isn't great here. Don't love the matchup at all, but Mixon has a very high PPR fantasy floor because of how many passes he catches. Now, I would be lying if the talk of the offseason wasn't about his week 9 performance in Carolina, how that basically saved his entire season. He wasn't doing anything until that point, and people are telling you to not draft Joe Mixon just because he averaged about like 12 to 15 points every other week, which isn't even bad. So I don't know why so many people are down on Mixon. I know he's getting a little bit older, but still, Samaje Perine isn't even there anymore. Now, even though this Browns defense is around top 10 in the league, like I said, he catches a lot of passes, so I wouldn't mind starting Mixon against Cleveland here in week 1. Next up at number 11, still in C tier here, we have Travis Etienne going against the Indianapolis Colts. I think this is a good matchup. He's expected to see more work this season, so this game is going to be very telling about how much he will actually play and in comparison to Tank Bigsby. I don't think Tank Bigsby is going to take his role by any means, but we'll get a clear confirmation here in week number 1, how many snaps Bigsby plays and how many snaps Etienne plays. I'm sure Etienne will still dominate that. Jags should also have the upper hand in this matchup. This is going to be a game where if the Jags pull out early, that's going to be great for Etienne. Right, he's going to get more rushing yards, more rushing attempts in that situation. And on the other side of the ball, for the Colts, Richardson might struggle in his first regular season game, and the Colts might be off the field for the majority of this matchup. So that's why I like Etienne in week number 1. Next up in C tier, we have Ramandre Stevenson going up against my Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles have a good D-line, but the weak point in their defense is the secondary for this team. I will admit it. Fortunately for Stevenson, though, he is probably the best quote-unquote receiver in New England. All right, Juju is there. Okay, he's a little better than mediocre. I'm not going to lie. No offense to Juju, but like the receiving core there is pretty pathetic. Tyquan Thornton just went on IR. Devontae Parker is questionable. Who do they have at receiver here? All right, Ramondre should put up a good fight to almost lead this team in receptions this year. Also, his floor is way too high to put him any lower. I think if the Pats lose this game pretty easily, but I still think he catches a lot of passes and still provides great fantasy value in week number 1, even against a stingy Eagles defense. All right, rounding off C tier here. At number 13, we have Miles Sanders going up against the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is a great matchup, and I'm going to admit I'm pretty low on Sanders heading into the entire season overall, but week 1 I have no problem starting him because the Falcons give up a lot of points on defense, a lot of rushing yards and a lot of points. Now, he's the only running back basically in Carolina, so as long as he can get the volume, he's going to be good to go. We got Chuba Hubbard behind him, but he hasn't done much in the past, and I hope throughout the season, or at least in week number 1, if anything, he can get more involved in this passing game. If he does get more involved in the passing game, I'd be more inclined to start him in the future, but we'll stick to week 1 and see how he does against pretty poor Atlanta defense. All right, at number 14 here, dropping it down a tier in D tier, we have Jamir Gibbs going against the Kansas City Chiefs in week number 1 on Thursday night, first game of the football season. Now, I'm not really sure exactly what to expect in game number 1 from Gibbs, so I'm playing it a little bit safe, ranking him at number 14, but I can easily see him having a big game, especially if this game turns into a shootout between two of the highest scoring teams in the entire league. This is the first game of the season. Everybody's going to be watching it. They're going to be balling out, scoring as many points as they possibly can, of course. The Lions have a top 5 O-line. Now, I expect Gibbs to take on most of the passing down work here in Detroit while David Montgomery takes most of the, 2-down running back work. But they're going to be on the field a lot at the same time as well. Like I said, I'm playing it a little bit safe here, having him at 14, but I'm still feeling good about starting him. Definitely, if you drafted Gibbs, start him in week number 1. Number 15, also in D tier, we have Kenneth Walker going up against the Los Angeles Rams. Now, this is another game where I think the Rams are going to struggle to move the ball, especially if Kupp is not on the field or he's not 100% even. Forget about it. I don't think the Rams even have the slightest chance to win this game in that scenario. Maybe they prove me wrong, but I doubt it. Walker is still the lead back here. A lot of people are worried about Zach Charbonnet, splitting carries with Kenneth Walker. He's been announced as the starting running back. I don't think he threatens K9's work, whatsoever here. I still think K9 gets around 20 carries per game. So I'm feeling confident against a poor Rams team in week number 1. Now at number 16 here, also in D tier, we have Rashad White going up against the Minnesota Vikings. This is a solid matchup for Rashad White here, I believe. Now, Minnesota isn't known to have the best defense in the league by any means. Now, even if Tampa Bay goes down early in this matchup, I still think White can have a great game because of his 3-down ability. He plays all 3 downs and he has great pass catching ability. All right, so even if the Bucs struggle early with Mayfield, he dumps the ball down a lot, and White will be the beneficiary right there. And he's also basically the only running back here. So I have no problem starting Rashad White in week number 1. Number 17 here, also in D tier, we have Alexander Madison going against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the opposite side of the ball of Rashad White in this matchup. Now, I think Madison has clearly a tougher matchup than White. Tampa's defense was not their problem last year. It was their O-line and their overall offense. Now, it's all going to depend on the volume that he gets and how many times they find themselves within that 5 to 10 yard line mark. All right, if they get down there in the red zone and have opportunities for him to score, if he gets a touchdown or 2, then he is going to score a lot of fantasy points. We know this by now. We've seen it when he started over Dalvin Cook in the past. Now, I'm optimistic about his yearly outlook, but there are definitely better options in week number 1 and better matchups in week number 1. Now, rounding off D tier here, we have J.K. Dobbins against the Houston Texans. I think this is a fantastic matchup for J.K. Dobbins here. And he is finally fully healthy. We're going to get to see that fully healthy J.K. Dobbins for one of the few times in his NFL career so far. Ravens have a top 10 O-line in the league. This is going to be a very tough matchup for the Houston Texans. I'm telling you right now, C.J. Stroud probably is going to struggle. Just like a lot of these other matchups that I talked about, the Texans will be off the field more than they're on the field, which will give even more opportunity for Dobbins to thrive in this matchup. Now, dropping it down a tier here, not saying this player is any less talented than the ones above him, but he has an ugly week 1 matchup. He is probably the ugliest week 1 matchup out of any player here. Najee Harris going against the San Francisco 49ers. He's probably playing arguably the number 1 defense in the entire league here. Now, I expect him to have a bounce back year overall, along with this whole Steelers team, by the way, but I'm keeping my expectations low for week number 1. The only positive about this situation and way that he can save his week, in my opinion, is going to be if he catches a couple passes. But overall, I think the San Francisco 49ers win this game pretty handedly, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong in that situation. Now, keeping it in E tier here at number 20, we have James Conner going up against the Washington Commanders. This is another tough matchup here. And James Conner is, I don't even know if I should say this, but I think he's potentially on the worst team in the National Football League heading into this season. Now, Conner is the definition of a volume running back. So he's going to need around 18 to 25 carries to make him worth the start in week number 1. I think he could get there. Now, this is a similar situation to who we're going to talk about next, actually, Damien Pierce, where I can see the Cardinals going down very early in this game and having to claw their way back into things. The reason that I like Conner just a little bit more than Damien Pierce is that he's a more consistent pass catcher. Conner has been a great pass catcher throughout his entire career, so even if the Cardinals go down early, he can, still have some decent fantasy value in week number 1. Number 21, like we were just mentioning, Damien Pierce going up against the Baltimore Ravens in week 1. Now, I like Pierce as a runner, but Baltimore has a very stingy defense. All right. And like I said earlier, I think that the Texans could go down early and they could struggle. CJ Stroud might get flustered. This might be a bad situation. All right. If they go down early, they're going to be stacking the box against Pierce. It's going to be very tough to run, and his carries are going to be limited. So I want him to get more involved in the passing game this season, starting with week number 1. We need to see that materialize in front of our eyes, and then I'd be more confident starting him in, future weeks. But in week number 1, got to have him down this low personally. Number 22, also in E tier, we have Javonte Williams going against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think this is a great matchup here. Las Vegas does not have a good defense whatsoever. He has good pass catching ability from the running back position. I am just really concerned about how he's going to play. All right. This is his first week back since that ACL surgery. So how much is he going to play compared to Pirine? All right. Are they both going to be on the field? Is it just going to be Williams' show? Is it going to be Pirine show for the first couple of weeks? We do not know. That's why I can't rank him any higher. Number 23 might be a little bit of a shocker here, but we have Raheem Mostert going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, this situation would have been totally different if Jonathan Taylor would have got traded to the Miami Dolphins. Everybody, I think, was expecting that to happen, but it did not happen. So it looks like Mostert is the guy here in Miami for at least the time being, because Jeff Wilson Jr. and Devon Achane are not healthy right now. They're not going to be on the field in week number 1, so he has basically no competition. And last year, he wasn't too bad either. So I'm going to take my chances here in week number 1 against the Chargers. All right, rounding off E tier here at number 24, we have Cam Akers going against the Seattle Seahawks. He's the leading running back for this team, but this team is overall horrible. Okay, like we talked about earlier, if Cooper Kupp is not on the field, this is going to be a very long game for the Rams. All right, if you can't get the passing game going, then the running lanes are not going to open up. And also, Seattle has a sneaky good defense. All right, you're hoping in this situation for Cam Akers, they get down to the goal line and he could sneak into the end zone and save his fantasy value in week number 1. But personally, I'm not feeling great about starting Cam Akers in week 1. Now we're going to drop it down a tier here to F tier. All right, we have David Montgomery going against the Kansas City Chiefs. We talked about this matchup earlier. Like I said, I think this is going to be a shootout, and I'm not sure if the Lions are going to be able to run the ball as much as they would like, but I know they're going to try to establish the running game early because their O-line is top 5 in the league. And if they do end up falling behind, I would expect Gibbs to get more of the work here. But if they can stay in this game and potentially have a lead at some points, Montgomery could have a solid outing. He's going to be a great option throughout the rest of the year, and this is another situation where we need to see what's going to happen with this team. We need to see what Gibbs is going to do. We need to see what Montgomery is going to do and how much each of them are going to be on the field. So I feel like number 25 is a good spot here in F tier. Another spot where I'm not sure what's going to happen with this team and this player is Dalvin Cook at number 26 against the Buffalo Bills. Now, I am expecting Dalvin Cook to be the main running back here until Breece Hall is back to 100%. So I'm expecting, later on in the season, they're going to ease him back into this offense. He's going to be such an explosive option later in the season. Not really a bad matchup for Cook right here, and he's a solid pass catcher as well. He's always been solid on the Vikings, so I'd be expecting more of the same here in week number 1. Now, rounding off F tier at number 27 here, we have Isaiah Pacheco. It might be a little criminal having him this low. He's going up against the Detroit Lions. Now, I do like Pacheco against Detroit, but the same reason that I have Gibbs higher up on this list than David Montgomery is the reason that I have Pacheco so low, because McKinnon could be on the field early and often in this matchup, especially if the Chiefs fall down at any point. Later on in the season, when the Chiefs are going to dominate matchups, then Pacheco is going to dominate the carries, but I don't know if this is the game for that. Also, the Chiefs never make it a guarantee who is going to see the ball on the goal line. They could shovel pass it to Travis Kelce. They could throw it to an offensive lineman. So even if they get down to that 1 yard line, you don't know if Pacheco is going to be that main option. So that's what kind of scares me in week number 1 against Detroit here. Now, dropping it down to our final tier here, G tier. Number 28, we have James Cook going up against the New York Jets. Now, this is not a great matchup in my personal opinion, but he does offer some solid pass catching value. And the Bills are a team that are known, even if they're up 30 points, they're going to throw the ball. All right, so James Cook might not be the most reliable running back option, 3-down running back option. I feel like that's why they went out and got Damien Harris for that first down and second down running back role. Maybe James Cook can play more on third down and the passing down scenarios, but I don't know. He doesn't really jump out to me as that 3-down back that they're looking for. Like I said, that's why I feel like they went out and got Damien Harris. So, not feeling great about having him play in week 1 against a stingy Jets defense, but if you got to play him, so be it. Number 29, we have Jamal Williams going up against the Tennessee Titans. This is a tough matchup in week number 1 for Williams, which is also game number 1 of Kamara's suspension. So I expect Williams to be the number 1 running back here in New Orleans as long as Kamara is suspended. Once he comes back, obviously I feel like Kamara is the number 1 option here. Now I know Jamal Williams was a goal line machine last year for the Detroit Lions, but the Saints are a team who have a guy named Taysom Hill on the team who is going to vulture those touchdowns. He did it to me all last season when I drafted Kamara. Jamal Williams, I'm telling you, watch your back. Don't be surprised if Taysom Hill scoots it in from the 1 yard line a couple times in week 1. All right, now we're going to finish off this list with DeAndre Swift going up against the New England Patriots here in week 1. Now, the Pats are no slouch on defense, but I couldn't leave Swift off of this list. I think he's going to do great things in the passing game for Philadelphia this season out of the backfield. Now, this is going to be more of a feeler game for me than anything of how much Swift gets used compared to Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell. We don't know how many snaps each of these guys are going to get, so week number 1 is going to be a telltale sign of how well I think Swift is going to progress into this season. Now, there's a couple options that I want to mention that I left off this list that were right on the cusp of being on there. Bijan Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson going up against the Arizona Cardinals. I think they have great matchups. I'm not 100% sure who is going to get more work here. That's why I left both of them off this list. Deion Jackson and Evan Hull against the Jacksonville Jaguars, another situation that's very similar to the Robinson and Gibson situation. Who's going to take most of that work while JT is out? We do not know. Samaje Perine, how much is he going to get used against the Las Vegas Raiders? And last but not least, Khalil Herbert against the Green Bay Packers. A little bit of a tough matchup here, and I don't know if he's going to be the number 1 running back. Is he going to split with Donta Foreman? Roschon Johnson going to get some work? We do not know. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, drop a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let me know who you are starting in week number 1 of your fantasy football season. I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.